It's the Man Cave Club.
So we're talking about bikes today, Paul. Is that what's going on?
Talking about Harley-Davidson.
Doing it again. Not just any bike. Harley-Davidson.
No, an American icon.
American icon.
Yeah, all the way. And it's just amazing. They're celebrating their 120-year anniversary this year. 120 years.
It's pretty significant.
120 years. Not too many companies around 120 years.
No, you know they always say that the first 100 are the hardest, right? And then once you get past 100,
that's what they say.
That's what they say, I guess.
Yeah. I can't think of too many companies. I mean, Ford Motor Company.
Too many American companies, at least, that have. Yeah, there's a lot of old European watchmakers and stuff that have been around for a long time, right? But like in this space, I mean, that's a feat, man. So many. I mean, you think of all the you know, giant storms that companies had to have weathered in 120 years of American history, world history.
Yeah. And
then to still be around, you know, to adapt.
Yeah.
Harley's got some cool stuff, man. They adapted and built a lot of stuff for the military, right, during war times and stuff like that. And it's cool, man. So
yeah. I mean, during the war, they pretty much shut down production and just built motorcycles for the military.
Yeah.
The Warrior Harley-Davidson are extremely sought after because they didn't build a lot for the domestic market. Just like you're talking about just hundreds, maybe a few hundred for the domestic market. So I thought, you know, we take the viewers through a little bit of a timeline history of the various engines. And, you know, Harley-Davidson started out with the flathead engine. That was their first design.
120 years ago.
120 years ago. I mean, basically, they were just, you know, bicycles with engines.
Totally, yeah. It looks like a...
Because Harley-Davidson started out as a bicycle manufacturer.
Yeah. That's rad.
Yeah.
And with little tiny engine strapped to it. You know, it's kind of funny. 120 years later, that's like, you see these e-bikes everywhere. And it's like, it's like a similar thing. We went full circle back to bikes with little motors on them.
Right, yeah.
But Harley has not. They've really evolved.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, so they went from the flathead, and then in 1936 was the first year for the Knucklehead engine. That was, of course, considered groundbreaking.
Sure.
You know, V-twin.
Top speed was probably insane for the time.
Yeah, totally, man. I mean, it was like, you know, to go from such a rudimentary design. One of the primary leaps forward was the recirculating oil in the crankcase, because prior to that, at least the older flathead engines were what they call like total loss systems.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, if you were, say, going to travel 20 or 30 miles, they actually had a chart in the manual where it would tell you how many pumps of oil you would pump into the engine to travel a certain amount of distance.
To get that far.
You had to manually oil.
Could you do that while you were riding? Could you add to it, or would you have to pull over? So. You'd have to pull over.
Yeah, you have to pull over.
And add more.
Wow. Like it was like, you know, it was the concept of like you pull over and put gas in the gas. As a matter of fact, the gas tank was split.
Yeah.
That's why there's two. I mean, I think to this day, that's why there's two halves to a Harley-Davidson gas tank. Mm-hmm. One half of the gas tank, the chamber was oil. The other half had gasoline in it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I know that.
They built the Knucklehead engine from 36 up until 1947 was the last year, which that's what this motorcycle is. This is a 1947 EL Knucklehead.
Did those earlier bikes have this form to them too, or did they pretty much look the same? Just things change and evolve mechanically, or like did the bodies look different? Like did the tins look different?
Well, yeah. In 36, they had quite a significant frame and chassis and suspension.
When they went from flathead to Knucklehead.
Yeah. I mean, the older models, you can tell the basic form was there, but it had not been
refined.
Refined or fully vetted yet. And it is pretty cool that, you know, if you look at these two motorcycles here, this is a 47 and this is a 2021.
Yeah.
And the basic design elements are still in place.
Absolutely, yeah.
Over 100 years later.
You're right. I would say this is a very refined version of this, right? It's like, you know, draw a concept sketch, and it's like, this is it.
Of course, the new Harley Davidson, there's just amazing technical advances. You know, it's what's under the chassis and under the hood that you think, the things that you don't see, which from a design perspective are the things that, to maintain the aesthetics of the motorcycle, they hide a lot of the technical advancements, which is really interesting when you think about it, right?
It sounds like a challenge.
Yeah, it's definitely a major challenge.
Yeah.
And so in 1948, they went from the Knucklehead engine to the Panhead, which is just another small step forward in their design. 48 was actually the last year for the Springer front end.
Okay.
So it was basically this motorcycle with the new Panhead engine with the Springer front end in 1948. Then in 49, they designed and developed the hydraulic front suspension.
Cool.
None of these earlier motorcycles had rear suspension. They were all hardtails.
All hardtails.
Yeah. They integrated the pogo style seat, the spring under the seat.
But that's a pretty huge leap forward.
Exactly.
And to go from this like Springer front end to that was probably like whoa. It also like looks so much more modern too. I mean, I guess because bikes are still using that type of front fork.
Yeah, I mean it definitely enhanced the stability of the front end and the steering.
Yeah.
Because for sure, you know, this Springer front end, especially if you get up on higher speeds, it's not exactly the most stable front suspension.
Yeah.
If you hit a bump or a crack or crevice, and also cornering, the hydraulic suspension is much better for cornering stabilization. Yes, the Panhead took us up to about 1965.
It's a pretty long run.
Yeah. I mean, it was a pretty good engine. And to this day, I mean, it's still a very sought after, you know, engine. And it's a lot of people's favorite, actually. So in 1965, 66, they went from the Panhead to the Shovelhead engine.
Okay.
That was the next iteration of Harley-Davidson's powertrain. And then the Shovelhead went all the way up into 1984.
It's a pretty good run too.
Yeah. Oh, and it's probably important to point out that in 1965 was the first year for the electric start.
So it was all kickstart before that.
All kickstart. And they maintained the actual manual kickstarter on their engines along with the electric start, because the early electric starts weren't very good.
So you had to back up.
I mean, if you lived in a cold climate, it wasn't strong enough to turn the engine over and start it.
Yeah.
So you had to have the manual kickstart.
Got it.
Yeah, so in the 60s, that's when they first introduced the name Electra Glide. And this 2021 motorcycle here is still called the Electra Glide. From 1966 to 1984 was the Shovelhead engine. And I actually remember the early 80s. I remember going to the Harley-Davidson dealership. I would have been in high school. I'm showing my age now, but I would have been like maybe a senior in high school, junior, senior in high school. And I can remember going to the Harley-Davidson dealerships and actually seeing the Shovelheads. You know,
that's awesome.
Brand new. But 1984 was the last year for the Shovelhead. And then in 1984, from 84 to 99, was the new EVO engine. And to this day, a lot of people believe that the EVO motor to be one of Harley-Davidson's best designs.
What do you think?
Well, I mean, it was a great engine for its time. One of the really cool things about it is you know that Harley-Davidson lope.
Yeah.
Because of the 45-degree angle V-twin engine.
Yep.
And the EVO engine, that was probably one of the strongest loping engines from my recollection.
Got it.
So it had that real classic Harley-Davidson
sound. Yeah. Absolutely. I don't think there's anyone who hasn't heard it. Right. You know, if you're out in the you've heard a bike pass you, you've heard one, and it's a good sound. For a gearhead, it's a good sound. From 1984 to 1999, those are the years for Harley-Davidson's EVO engine. And then in 1999, they came out with the twin cam engine. And they ran that engine right up until 2017. In 2017, again, they redesigned their engine to come out with the Milwaukee 8, which is what this Electra Glide has. And I have to say, this is an amazing engine. It runs so efficiently, and it runs probably about 50% cooler, I would say, because my old Softail had the old twin cam motor in it. You know, from personal experience, I could say this runs. Yeah, the next step up.
Yeah, it's a liquid cooled engine.
The twin cam was air cooled.
Yeah. So
liquid is that why?
Well, mostly all of Harley-Davidson engines up until this iteration were air cooled.
Yeah, and that's what those fins are on the side.
Yeah,
of the engine, the head, and the block. Right, they're heat sinks. Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
For those that don't know.
But I think the way it works is that the liquid is circulated through ports in the head to keep the heads cool.
Cool. So I mean that's a pretty cool system what you're describing, and you know, is there anything else that helps it run cooler? Or?
The Milwaukee 8 has 4 valves per cylinder head.
Cool.
It also has an idle cooling system, which when you're stopped at a red light for a period of time, it actually shuts down the cylinder, and the front cylinder acts as an air pump to keep the engine cool. And as soon as you hit the throttle and accelerate, the cylinder fires again, and it's. I mean, you don't even notice it. It's like almost instantaneously.
Yeah. That's awesome. It's you know, I'm sure everyone's experienced being at a stoplight next to a car that shuts off nowadays, and they shut off, and the second they hit off the brake and touch the gas, it turns back on and goes. Right. And that's cool that they're implementing kind of similar-ish technology to motorcycles now.
Which, by the way, auto start.
I've never driven one of those.
I hate it.
It freaks me out.
My truck has it.
Does it?
I hate it. And I actually just turn it off.
Oh, you can turn it off?
Oh yeah, you can turn it off. There's a button on the dash. Just turn it off.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. I haven't driven a car. We're getting off topic here, but it's still funny. I've never driven a car with that, but I know it would drive me nuts. So the Milwaukee Eight, man, this is a cool bike, and like you were saying earlier, man, I think just the basic design DNA in both these bikes, unmistakably Harley-Davidson, but you got all the modern. You got stereo, you got full sweep of gauges. Like, this thing looks super comfy. It looks like you could really ride this thing for a very long distance.
Yeah, it's a really comfortable. I mean, this is considered a touring model. Harley-Davidson sort of has just 2 classifications of motorcycles. They have the Softail and have the touring bikes, or what's otherwise known as a bagger.
Yep.
The main difference is the rear suspension. The touring motorcycles has the full dual shock suspension, and the Softails has a single mono shock, which is mounted under the seat with the rear swing arm.
Got it.
Pretty good design. I mean, both bikes are very comfortable to ride. I would say the Softail's maybe a little more comfortable. It's not quite as stiff in the back.
When this thing has more weight, since it's meant for touring, when these are loaded down, does it become more? It's softer, right?
I would say so. Yeah. Yes. And, I mean, it's designed for touring. Yeah. It's a longer wheelbase. It's designed to have a passenger on the back if you choose to do so. Yeah. A touring pack behind the passenger, which is another case for your helmet and gear. And the Revival motorcycles are they look back in their archives and they take a classic look and design, and they use that package around a new motorcycle. So this particular motorcycle is styled after a 1969 Electra Glide, and if you look at a 1969 Electra Glide, it looks
so similar.
It's exactly the same. It's like the paint scheme, the white fairing, the white bags, the two-tone tank, the emblems. Everything is exactly the same. Of course, this bike has all the modern technology, the modern engine, modern suspension.
Well, I think you chose well, man. I like this color scheme. Is like so good. 69 was such a good year for design for so many different things, and they really got it right, dude.
It says a lot about Harley-Davidson classic design. It's classic, it's vintage, but in a way, it's timeless, really.
Totally.
And I don't know what that's about. I mean, because it's so integrated into the American culture, like Chevrolet, Gibson guitars, Fender guitars. I mean, these classic American icons that's been so ingrained into American culture and what we all know and love.
Totally.
Yeah, I don't know. It triggers the visual senses.
Yeah. There's just so much right about it. I think people with higher IQs than I figured these designs out, and the guys at Harley, man, or the gals, I don't know, they did a good job. These the new and the old, and they work so well next to each other. And I mean, that's how they look. But like as far as like functionality, I mean, you're missing a control there. Like how do they function? Like rideability, brakes and clutch and shift. Are they pretty similar in that respect?
Well, it's sort of interesting because some of them, the functionality, the mechanics, you can see like on this 47 because it has the foot clutch and the jockey shifter on the tank. That is a direct adaptation from an automobile, right?
Right.
If you have a foot clutch, that's derived from an automobile. I mean, and most motorcycles that predate like the 1950s had foot clutches. Like the Indian had a foot clutch, hand shifter. The 47, the front brake is on the left side, and the rear brake's on the right foot. So that actually stayed the same. Sometime around the early 1950s with the Panhead, I think it was 1952, they transferred the foot clutch to the hand.
To the left hand, and then the right hand went to the front brake, and it hasn't really changed since.
Yeah, and the transmission shift went to the right, the left foot.
The left foot, yeah.
Yeah, the transmission shifter went to the left foot. So you have a left brain, right brain function going on.
You got brakes on the right side. You got clutch and shift on the left side.
Shifting clutch on the left side. Yeah.
That's cool. I mean, that's I've seen in I'm not totally, numb to motorcycle culture. I grew up watching West Coast choppers, and like the jockey shift was like, it's like that's like the hardcore, like purest chopper thing, and it's it comes from a really old bike, but it's more dangerous, right? You're taking a hand off the handlebars,
exactly,
right? So you only got one hand on. I mean,
if you're used to the modern system with the hand clutch, it takes a little while to adjust your brain.
Oh, I'm sure.
To the foot clutch, but I mean, it took me maybe a week or two to get really adapted to it.
Sure.
But once you do, it really is a lot of fun to ride.
I bet.
With the foot clutch and the tank shifter. It's a blast to ride.
Yeah, it's fun, man. I've had a few old Chevy trucks, like from the 50s, with, 3 on the tree. Right. And it's got a foot starter. And it's just cool, man, to use those, like, super mechanical. And when something's preserved, a lot of those foot starters get converted to just a regular starter on the column, on the key. And, people don't like 3 on the tree, but, like, it's fun driving that stuff. And, I've heard the term jockey shift, suicide shifter, like a lot of terms get thrown around. Is that all the same thing? Is there? I've seen them behind the leg too. Is that a little different?
Like that's a jockey shift.
Okay.
Yeah, but there is a little bit of a misnomer about the term suicide shifter.
Okay.
It's technically a suicide clutch, because what a lot of the old bike builders used to do, and still do, is actually take the return spring off the clutch. On the clutch pedal, there's a return spring mechanism that returns the position of the clutch pedal to the disengaged position.
Yeah, same thing in a car.
Right, exactly. So they take that spring off. So what's sort of scary about that is, like, if you're waiting at a red light and that clutch pedal engages, you can be out in the middle of the intersection.
Right.
So that's the term. Really, the term is suicide clutch.
And why would they do that? What's the benefit of not having the return spring on it?
Just to make it like faster, and more responsive. When you're riding the motorcycle,
you're not fighting the tension. You don't have to overcome the spring tension to push the clutch in.
Yeah.
So you put your foot under it to bring it back if you need to. Use your toe to kick it back.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of a different riding style.
Yeah. Okay.
And
sounds sketchy.
Yeah, it is. I mean, but there's all sorts of those types of modifications.
Paul, this has been a great discussion, man. I appreciate you taking the time to teach me and the viewers about these bikes, and I'm excited to see the comment section in this video, or all the bikers coming out, and all the Harley historians coming out, and
commenting on everything I said wrong,
saying everything we got wrong and everything we got right, and adding their own stuff. It's always fun to watch and read. So if
right on.
And to the viewer, if you guys if you got any questions for us, you got suggestions for future videos, right? We're always happy to hear those.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hear those things. At a certain point, we're gonna run out of ideas. So we need you guys
to run out of ideas.
Tell us. We need you guys to tell us.
Yeah.
And so thanks for having me again, Paul.
Yeah, seriously, thanks for coming down. It's always fun hanging out with you, Jimmy. Yeah. Thanks a lot, guys, for joining us here in the Man Cave Club.
Jimmy and Paul talking about it all.
See you next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe.